Hi everybody, this is Judy at Judy in the Kitchen. Today I'm going to start fermenting some green beans with carrots, and I'm going to show you how I do it. Alright, I have some fresh green beans that I have washed. I've cut the ends off on both sides and cut them into bite-sized pieces, and then I put them in a gallon mason jar. And my purpose was to ferment the green beans, but anytime I have extra space in the jar, I just fill it up with diced carrots. And we want to have the vegetables up to about where the shoulder is on the jar. So you can see where the jar starts to curve inward. You want your vegetables up to that point. So I just filled the rest of the jar with green beans. Now, you don't pack them in there tightly. You don't tamp them down like you would cabbage for sauerkraut. You just put them in there loosely and they will snug up against themselves, no problem. Now, unlike a lot of people who ferment cabbage, and I do that as well, I like to use a starter culture. As long as I have used the starter, I have had 100% success. This is what I use. Now, I'm not promoting this brand over any other brand. This is what I happen to have at the moment. I'll put a link in the description box below where you can get this or starter cultures like that. And they have little packets on the inside of the box. And I don't necessarily follow the instructions completely. I will use 1/4 of a teaspoon of the starter culture. That's not quite 1/4 of a teaspoon. I'll add a little bit more. You see it's kind of like a white powder. And I have some distilled water here. I have 2 cups of distilled water there. That's about, brings that to about 1/4 of a teaspoon. And I'm letting it sit in some distilled water. You don't have to use distilled water, but you want to make sure whatever you use does not have chlorine in there. So you can use filtered tap water, but fluoride also acts as an antimicrobial, and my filter does not remove the fluoride, and I know I've got fluoride in my tap water. So sometimes I'll do a mixture of filtered tap water with the distilled, but this is just distilled. And so I'm going to just stir this up a little bit, and you want to let it sit for about 15 minutes so that the microbes can activate, and I'll be back at that point. Alright, it's been 15 minutes, and so now this water is ready to be used, and we have to make a brine out of it, and by doing that you have to add some salt to it. Now, we don't want to use just any salt. You want to make sure it does not have iodine in there. A lot of people will use sea salt of various sorts. That's fine. What I have here is canning and pickling salt, and I know that there's nothing added to that. So my rule of thumb is to add 1 teaspoon of the canning and pickling salt to 1 cup of water. Now, I have 2 cups of water here, so I'm adding 2 teaspoons of the salt. I want to get something to stir that with, and you want to stir it until that salt is completely dissolved, and then I'm going to pour it into the jar and keep adding salty water like this, the same ratio, 1 teaspoon of salt to 1 cup of water, until I cover these vegetables, and then we have to weigh them down. Alright, I think that's good to go, and we're going to carefully pour this in there, and I know we're going to need more water than that. You bet. Now, I don't need to add any more of the starter culture. That was enough to ferment this 1/2 gallon of vegetables here. Okay, that's right at 2 cups there. Add another 2 teaspoons of salt. Stir it up. You just want to keep doing this until we have enough water to cover the vegetables, but we still will be adding more water beyond that. Okay, now I've got the vegetables about even with the water, which is what you want. Now you want to weigh these things down in some way. There is no right or wrong way to do this as far as I'm concerned. There are different ways to do this. And in an earlier video, I showed how I weigh them down with, it was cauliflower, and how I weigh it down with the leaves. When I'm doing cabbage, I'll weigh it down with the cabbage leaves. What I have here in these little tiny muslin bags, you can see how small they are compared to my hand, are some ceramic pie weights. They're called ceramic baking beans, and you don't have to use these. It's just something that I bought to try out, and they worked really well. And I don't have the bag absolutely full, but it's about 2/3 of the way full. There's a little drawstring here, and I'm just going to kind of squeeze it shut and fold it over so that the little beans don't come out of there, and just lay it in there so that the vegetables stay put. Because I'm going to add some more water to this and cover these little bags up as well. But you want these to be on top of those vegetables as much as you possibly can. There we go. That brings that around. Got another one here. And I've got one more, but I think I'm going to take some of these beans out of here. I don't think I want this bag really full. And just get that in there. The point is, you want to keep your vegetables submerged all the time. These little bags don't have to be submerged all the way, but we want everything, the vegetables in particular, covered up constantly. Okay, now you see I brought the water way up, and now I'm just going to put a plastic lid on this, and I'm going to put it in a pan with a cloth underneath of it, because as these get to fermenting, bacteria in there is going to form air bubbles, gas bubbles, and it's going to bubble up, and some of the water could possibly come out through the cap. And so I want something under this to catch that water as it goes. And I'm also going to label this, and I let it sit at room temperature for 10 days. So I always label it the starting day and the ending day. And when it's finished, we just take the cap off. And for this purpose, I will remove those little bags and the little beans and put the cap back on and put it right in the refrigerator. People will ask, how long will these keep in the fridge? I have never ever had them spoil. I think they will last for months on end, maybe beyond that. I don't know. I've never had them that long, but they will be fine in the refrigerator, and they will continue to ferment in the fridge, but at a much slower pace than if you left them out. So 10 days is usually fine. And then you'll have some fermented vegetables to add to your salads. Now, I know somebody out there is going to ask, what do fermented green beans taste like? Well, they have a unique flavor, and it's very hard for me to describe because I can't really compare them to anything else. They taste like green beans, but with a tang to them. It's basically all I can say, is they taste like tangy green beans. And we eat a large salad as a meal every day for one of our 3 meals. And I will usually put some sort of a fermented vegetable in that salad to go along with it. And I consider it like a probiotic supplement to have that in there. And I like to vary the vegetables, and so the green beans and carrots are one of the varieties that I like to change it out to once in a while. If you have questions, I'll be glad to answer them if I possibly can. This is Judi at Judi in the Kitchen. I hope this helps. Bye now.